What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Control Freak Podcast. I am your host, Alex, and today's episode, I have on special guest Evan Bruce to review the Nerd Rage Series Minneapolis Tournament, Pioneer Tournament, that had two Azorius Control decks meet in the finals of this tournament. It was an awesome tournament. Of course, Nerd Rage Gaming does such a great job with the coverage. Additionally, we will be reflecting, or rather, I will be reflecting on my very first RCQ with Azorius Control over the weekend. I ended up getting 10th, but I learned a lot. Let's just say that. But without further ado, let me introduce Evan Bruce.
Hey, what's going on?
What's up? What's up? How's it going? How are you doing?
Oh, man, I'm living the dream. It's always what it is, right?
Yeah, right. Are you excited to talk about the fact that at this NRG in Minneapolis, we had two Azorius Control decks of different flavors, top 8, not only top 8, but they met in the finals.
Not only am I excited to talk about it, but I'm excited to talk about your end being the one that wins.
Okay, calm down. I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself. Anyways, I'm stoked, though. This is going to be an awesome conversation. Before we jump into it, though, let's get a little bit of the housekeeping out of the way. First up, no new patrons this week, but if you enjoy the podcast and would like to support my content directly, you can do so directly for less than $1 an episode by heading over to patreon.com/lessalex. Every patron member will receive a Control Freak sticker along with other perks based on whichever tier you support at. And as a reminder, the podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, basically everywhere that you can download a podcast, you can listen to it, as well as, of course, YouTube and Twitch. We also stream live on my Facebook page. But make sure to head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Give a 5-star review over on those platforms. And make sure to check out my content over on quietspeculation.com, where this past week I played Jeskai Narset in a video and did a little mini article in Explorer. And this Tuesday, which will be tomorrow if you're listening to this and not live with us tonight, Sunday night, I will be playing in a video Mono White Humans in Explorer, testing out Copper Coat Vanguard, which was, of course, my top card from Aftermath for the Pioneer and Explorer set.
Do you know how to do that?
What's that?
Play mono white?
Dude, it's a blast. It's so good. Anyways, additionally, if you'd like to chop it up with me elsewhere, hit me up on Twitter at @LessAlex over there and join the Discord. That link is in the description and in the show notes below. It's an open Discord, so that's open and free for everybody to join. Of course, if you are a patron or a subscriber, there are additional channels that are open to the Discord members over there. Okay, that is the spiel. That's the housekeeping. Let's jump into the meat and potatoes, which is, of course, NRG Minneapolis. This was a 10K showdown. It was the featured tournament. They do 2 tournaments. They do Pioneer Modern split this week. It was Pioneer was the featured format, the main format. And shout out to Daniel Weiser and Sean Gallagher on their amazing performances. Both of them were 7-0-1 going into top 8, and they just slaughtered everybody in the top 8 with Azorius Control. Let's bring up the rest of the top 8 here. So, of course, we've got Daniel and Sean atop the standings with Azorius. And then we've got Fletcher Johnson on Lotus Field combo, Connor Layan with Mono Blue Spirits, Cliff Claff. I don't know if that's it. I don't think that's his real name.
It says right in the top right there.
Yeah, Cliff Boyardee. And on Boros Agro. And then this another person who I think
didn't submit
their actual name on Melee. They were on Mono Black mid range, which was
That list
Very
is
spicy. The spiciest list in the top 8 for sure. Kyle Gonzalez on Is It Creativity, and Chris Smith.
I'm gonna say, like, hold on, we may not say Mono Black is the spiciest.
Niv to Light. Well, I still think that
This deck is playing 2 Niv Mizzet Supremes.
Yeah, baby. But yeah, overall, obviously this is I mean, we've got Boros Aggro, which is of course the breakout deck of this tournament, and it's been a deck that is getting memed to all eternity on Twitter right now. Not in a bad way, right? Like, it's everybody is just excited about this brand new deck, I think. And yeah, it's good. It's good. And I saw some people at my RCQ playing it as well. Additionally, the Lotus combo still lurking in the shadows. Anytime that anyone thinks this deck is dead, it just pops up and spikes a huge tournament.
But we have no mono green.
Yeah, no mono green in the top 8. If we look at the top 16, we've got Neoform Atraxa, Mono White Humans, Rakdos Sack, Greasefang, Rakdos Mid, Esper Control, and then another Mono White Humans. But yeah, no mono green here in the top even 25 on the first page here. Is that surprising?
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's I played against it 3 times at my RCQ. I won 1 and I lost 2. But yeah, the fact that it's not here at a big tournament, very interesting. I would like to know the breakdown and win percentage. Obviously, the win percentage wasn't great for mono green at this tournament. But let's take a look at the winning deck list. This is, like I said, Daniel Weiser on Yorion build of Azorius Control. So that means we're, of course, playing Ominous Seas, Leyline Binding, Shark Typhoons. We got 3 Supreme Verdicts. Make Disappear. Absorb is only a 2 of, which is interesting. One thing to take note, Rewind.
Yeah, there's a couple of cards that stand out to me.
Yeah. So Rewind, of course, Bryce last week talked about his amazingly beautiful, peculiar list. But Rewind is starting to show up more and more in Azorius Control because it allows you to double spell, and it allows you to counter 2 spells in a turn when, normally you wouldn't be able to. Any thoughts on Rewind as a card in this format, in this deck?
I mean, it's weird to me. I think playing 4 Leyline Binding and 4 Shark Typhoon make Rewind make sense.
Yeah.
At least more so.
Cryptic Rocket says Rewind is legal. Yes, Rewind is a legal Magic card in Pioneer. But yeah, it's definitely not stock, but I think that based on my conversations with other Azorius mages, I think that Rewind might be legitimate. What
do you think about Jawari Disruption over Censor?
I've liked that. So full candor, I've never played a Yorion build of Azorius Control.
Yeah.
Now, the reason being is I like having 60 cards. My old boomer brain tells me that if I have 60 cards, my percentages are going to be better to hit the cards that I want to hit when I want to hit them, and so on. But I think that Jawari Disruption is good because you can hit your land drops. Obviously, it's a land on the other side, but yeah, I don't know. It's Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was also curious what you thought about 4 Aether Gust in the sideboard versus some amount of what's the new counterspell?
Oh, change the equation? Yeah, change the equation. Obviously, excellent when they're casting the spell. But Aether Gust, obviously a little bit more flexible. It deals with resolved permanents. So I don't hate it. Personally, I would probably be playing change the equation, but I didn't just win a 10K. So One other interesting thing is Chrome Host Seed Shark.
I love that.
And if you saw, did you watch any of this tournament at all?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. He was making so many incubate tokens with this thing. It was insane. The fact that it has 4 toughness is huge. But yeah, this is excellent.
Well, and like the fact that he can verdict and have something left over is game changing. Like there's no, this is the first time we've kind of had that in blue white, because even with Shark Typhoon, you lose the shark. With Seed Shark, since it makes an incubate token and not a creature right away,
yeah,
you get to keep your token.
Yeah. I mean, Chrome Host Seed Shark, excellent. I think I was very low on this card. It was not in my top 5 video for Quiet Spec. A lot of people asked me about it. I would say it would have been in my top 10 probably. But the fact that it is popping up here in a major tournament, it definitely looked better than I thought it was. Rounding out the sideboard, we've got Rest in Peace, Mystical Dispute, Dinnick, which is a card I know pops up occasionally. Then we've got Veto, Dream Trawler, which is a card that I haven't played in a long time, only because, yes, it's very good against mid-range. Obviously, you slam it down. But I've been on the cat build for some time now. And I think, personally, getting the extra bodies from Regal Caracol is super important against red-black mid-range. That way they can't just, like, play Liliana minus it or, just, like, Dreadbore it or whatever. Now, with Dream Trawler, obviously, getting this thing off the table is almost near to impossible. But if they make you tap it several turns in a row, they can just kill you, right? Like, you just never get to block with it. So,
I mean, that's true.
But coming
through,
through,
I don't know how often that happens.
Yeah, I mean, most times when you resolve, don't get it twisted. Most times when you resolve Dream Trawler, the game almost ends on the spot. But there are corner case scenarios when you have to play it, and then they Liliana or Shieldred's Edict or whatever the case may be, and those are bad times. And then we have Hullbreaker Horror, obviously for the blue decks, and then we've got Yorion as the companion here. So, I don't have personally too much to say about this specific list, just because I've not played Yorion. I've never played a build of Yorion. I think that's more, you play a lot of Yorion.
Yes, I do.
Is there anything that particularly sticks out about this list? Anything peculiar to you that
I mean, the big thing that I feel like gives this deck advantage over the non-Yorion version is having 4 Leyline Binding main. Like that card is like, that's part of the reason why I like playing any of the like Niv to Light decks or the like any of those 5 color decks. It's because I want to play Leyline.
Oh yeah. And this is obviously one of the best removal spells in the format, one of the best pieces of tech for Azorius Control decks. You do have to stretch your mana base, obviously. But that being said, Leyline Binding, I mean, 1 mana, kill anything, remove anything from the battlefield, obviously insane. And at instant speed, obviously very, very strong. So that might be a reason to play this list over a more traditional build. Let's, though, take a look at Sean Gallagher's list here, and I'll be able to talk a little bit more about this list for sure. But alrighty, here we go. So this is Sean Gallagher's list. We've got 4 Wandering Emperor. This is something that I've seen pop up a little bit here and there. And when I had George Jabor on several weeks ago, he said he was toying with the idea of playing 4 Wandering Emperors. Of course, here Sean is playing all 4 and, almost took down the tournament. 3 temporary lockdowns, so heavy on the lockdowns. No lay down arms. That is super important. And I think the reason for that is, well, of course, you get a better mana base, but also the Convoke deck was here. What do you think about Lay Down Arms versus a heavy lockdown build?
I mean, I think as the Boros Convoke deck keeps growing in popularity, you almost have to move towards lockdown.
Yeah, there's no way to 1-for-1 that deck. They will kill you on turn 4.
Correct. I think Sean's list is a very good example of someone moving towards the red-white Convoke meta. Like, we see 2 settles in the sideboard. That is, I think, a big nod to that deck.
Oh, yeah.
As well as going back to Angels. Like, I think Angels against red-white Convoke are going to, at least, I don't know. I feel like they're better.
Yeah, I mean,
this a lot of the other packages.
This build is certainly better, just in general. Having lockdown, I played 4 lockdown main in my RCQ, and it was so good. I was instantly sold on lockdown. I played against Rona combo and literally lockdowned 3 times in one game, and exiled, I think, 8 permanents.
Jesus.
Between the 3. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah,
it's just insane. 3-1 split of Verdict and Farewell.
Yeah, I will say that is one difference too between Sean's list and Daniel's list, is Daniel wasn't playing Farewell at all.
Yeah.
In the, I was going to say 75, but it's 95.
Yeah. I think personally, Farewell is excellent against Rakdos and Mono Green. I think that this card, you have to have it if you're expecting, and I mean, those 2 decks are basically the most popular decks.
Well, I mean, let's look at, even in the top 8 of this tournament, like, Farewell really wouldn't be that impactful.
Yeah, I think, though, if you were to take this to an RCQ or a 1K or whatever, chances are there will be plenty of Mono Green and Rakdos lists to
I'm still blown away that there's no Mono Green or Rakdos in this top 8.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of, and I think that the fact that people were playing that red-white Convoke deck might have a lot to do with that. Probably. I mean, that deck's fast, dude. It can kill you. It can put 12 power or more on turn 2, which is insane. Moving on, we've got 3 vetoes, 4 memory deluge, 4 make disappear, 4 absorb, 2 march. No change the equations main. We are playing 4 absorbs, which, I was speaking last week. How good is absorb still? Well, it's still
here.
The hardest counter and the best hard counter we really have. Now, I guess you could start arguing that rewind is pretty good as well.
I think that's a completely different slot.
But
I think, like, you could talk about, like, I see people do a split with Saw It Coming. Like, there's argument to be made because you can leverage that advantage.
Yeah.
Or what's the Surveil one?
I don't know. I can't think of it. Yeah, I know it's the blue one, counter target spell with Surveil.
Yeah.
Sinister Sabotage. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. The only cards I remember ever are counter spells or just random nonsense Azorius cards. But 4 memory deluge too. This is interesting because we've seen, usually like 2 or 3, but Sean committing to the 4 and cutting Shark Typhoons for that. I would imagine that's kind of that slot.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting. Obviously, Shark Typhoon is great to bridge you from the early to mid game. And then if you ever make a giant shark, or, I mean, God forbid you resolve this thing, the games typically end pretty soon after. But he was also not playing cats, playing Baneslayer Angel as a 2 of, playing 2 Mystical Disputes, 2 Rips, 2 Settles, 1 Veto, 1 Elspeth Sun's Champion, 1 Farewell, 1 Fateful Absence, Hullbreak Horde, 1 the 4th Temporary Lockdown in the board, and then Test of Talents. Interesting things about this sideboard. We have 2 Baneslayer Angels, and I actually talked to Sean. He said had he had the cards, he would have probably played Lyra and Boonbringer as a split.
Yeah.
He just had 2 Brainslayers, so he played them.
That's fair.
Because those are just strictly, better versions of Baneslayer at this point. Yeah. Boonbringer has awesome synergy because of you have Shark tokens, you have Samurai tokens from Wandering Emperor, and obviously other angels or human tokens from your Ardenvale. So obviously Boonbringer being able to put their abilities in that +1 counter on them, very, very good. And then Test of Talents. Test of Talents seems interesting to me because you can hit a lot of stuff in the Lotus combo deck. There's a lot of juicy targets in that deck. You can hit things like Storm the Festival, Storm the Festivities. What is it? Storm the Festivities? Very good hit out of mono green.
Oh, Storm the Festival.
Yeah, very good hit. You hit that, you're living life. Like that's good, clean living right there. Are there any notable additions or redactions from this sideboard?
I mean, I'm still not sure if I'm a huge fan of Hullbreaker Horror in the format.
Yeah, I agree. I played it in my 75 at the RCQ, and I didn't really play against any matchups where it would be relevant, but even still, I was just like, I've always been pretty mid on Hullbreaker Horror.
Yeah, it just, it doesn't feel like it's relevant against enough of the format.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 matchups you really want it are the Mirror, or like Dimir control, Esper control, any control deck, or
Lotus.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't feel like it's great against it's slow.
But the one place I do love it is against Is It Creativity.
Yeah.
That is because you just need something to resolve at instant speed.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
But even still, if they're playing the Gear Hulk version, you could resolve it, and then they could play Gear Hulk in response. And it's just, I agree with you. I think that Hullbreak Horror is probably not necessary anymore.
Yeah.
And I've never been a huge fan of it in the first place. But moving forward, though, which list do you think folks should gravitate for? Because we have 2 amazing examples of Azorius Control. I mean, it made it to the finals of a 10K.
I mean, realistically, I think it depends on your meta. I think if you are someone who's going to see, you're worried about mono green, I would play the first place list, the Yorion list. I think having Leyline Binding against mono green helps a lot. If you're not as worried about mono green, I think Sean's list is great. I think Sean's list is going to be more universally applicable.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I struggled against mono green at my RCQ. My only 2 losses came against mono green, and that matchup, it just feels like they either crush you way early, or it's a top deck war and a grind fest.
Yeah.
But I don't feel favored in that matchup in the slightest, and I wanted to draw as many farewells as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And do you have anything to say other than, kind of a weird top 8 here or anything?
I think it's good, healthy format. We have 7 different decks out of the top 8.
And 2 of them very new decks, right? Like
I mean,
Mono Black
relative.
mid-range and
Yeah.
Boros Aggro is a deck that Aspiring Spike and Doomwake have been working on for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But other than those two streamers, I mean, and now that Twitter's talking about it because of this top 8, it was really a non-factor until this past weekend. So,
but happy to see the format healthy and with a lot of like still being able to play things. Like if you can still top 8 with Niv Delight, it's a good format.
right. Well, I would argue if Azorius Controls win in tournaments, the format is extremely healthy.
Yeah.
Because that means we've got a nice mid-range deck. We've probably got some good combo decks. And of course, we've got a very, very powerful aggro deck.
Yep.
So that is kind of NRG. We're not going to talk about the Modern Showdown. I wanted to focus on this one because we had a dominating performance by these two folks, Daniel and Sean. Overall, I think looking at the metagame breakdown, I forget what it was, but it was only 3 or 4 folks played Azorius Control. And the fact that 2 of them top 8'd is very, very good and says a lot about how strong this deck is currently.
It's in a good place.
Yeah. Now, and I know this wasn't in the show notes, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to throw you for a curveball here.
How dare you?
The tournament that was in Europe over the weekend had some pretty much opposite of this NRG. Pretty scary numbers, if you ask me, in terms of the conversion rate and things of this nature. We had, let me take a look here. We had 33 Azorius Control lists.
There was only 5 at NRG, by the way.
5, and 2 of them top 8'd the NRG. But speaking about this tournament that happened, it was a big European tournament over the weekend at the LMS Valencia tournament. This was a big Pioneer tournament in Europe. Azorius Control, 33 decks. The third most popular deck in the room behind Rakdos at 81 decks and Mono Green Devotion at 34 decks. The conversion rate from day 1 to day 2, it was 8% day 1 of the meta. It dropped to 1.6 day 2. So there was only a 3% conversion rate of the 33 decks. That is terrible. I don't even think I needed to say that, right? Like that is just a god-awful conversion rate.
It's a rough week.
Rough weekend indeed. I don't know. My personal opinion on the VML conversion rate thing is it's an outlier. You never know, what matchups you get, how folks' draws are. There's a lot of things that go into having a successful tournament. So I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. And I know I'm kind of throwing a curveball here at you, but
I mean, I think it's one of those things where you see those numbers and it's easy to go, oh, well, I don't want to play that.
Right.
But also you have to understand that is one tournament.
Yeah.
And variance definitely, as we all know as Magic players, is a huge part of this game. And it's a big part of tournament results as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think watching trends on Moto pay much better dividends in terms of what to play than looking at one tournament result and going, nope, not going to play it.
Right. I mean, that's a two-way street, though, too, because, the NRG put 2 of the 5 Azorius Control lists that were in the tournament into top 8. However, I think we can gather based on previous tournaments and just the knowledge of Pioneer players, and I'm talking about like solid Pioneer players, you know, like the
So not me.
not me
The
either.
good ones.
But other podcasts have talked about it and have recently even put Azorius Control as the best deck in the format. Not the most popular. I mean, it does have its following, obviously, but I don't know. I don't know if I would say that it's the best deck in the format. I think that if you have the correct 75 for any tournament, you could win if you're playing the correct 75 of Azorius Control, because it definitely has the tools to beat every deck.
Or correct 95. The correct 75 to 95 cards.
Okay. Very true. Very true. But yeah, no, I think the deck's still solid. I think it's in the top 5 best decks in the format. Would you agree or
Oh,
have any
absolutely.
thoughts?
I would say it's in rotation of the top 3. I think there are 3 slots that rotate, every couple of weeks, and I think this Boros aggro deck may shake some things up.
Oh yeah.
I think Blue White's going to have to adapt to the popularity of that deck.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I think while we're figuring out how to adapt appropriately, that best deck in the format's probably going to shift. I think Greasefang is kind of poised to be in a really good spot, especially against that aggro deck, because they just don't care.
Yeah, they certainly don't. And yeah, Greasefang's still an issue. So I'm going to shift gears here and I'm going to talk about my experience at the RCQ. I think that, I think we can learn a lot, not only from the successful, obviously Azorius Control winning and getting first and second at a major tournament is amazing and awesome to see, and it builds confidence in the deck. I went 4-2 at my RCQ. It was my first. I do want to say it was my first competitive format or competitive tournament since paper tournament before the pandemic. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just laying the lay of the land. Match 1, game 1, I forgot to name Kahira as my companion.
Love that.
Love it. Yeah. I had been playing the Angels build at my locals and just haven't had a lot of reps with. Actually, I have never played with a companion in paper other than 3 weeks ago at my local.
Yeah, it's weird.
And in paper, right? Because in Moto, you just select it, and obviously in Arena, it's just automatically there, and it is a whole different thing. I had my buddy Ben, shout out Ben, he lent me some cards, and he kind of walked me through the competitive way to reveal your companion. So, shout out Ben Bauer. Appreciate it.
Did you keep it face down until?
No, I was just asking, like, okay, is it like after you shuffle and present? And so like that's whenever you're supposed to identify, hey, I have a companion. He is it's my companion. So I do also want to shout out Sean Gallagher for this list, because I saw Sean's list and I'm in a Discord with him, and I was like, hey dude, if you were playing an RCQ tomorrow, what list would you play? And he shipped me this list. So I appreciate it, Sean, if you're listening or if you watch this at any point. And yeah, I mean, it was excellent. I was playing, so if you're seeing it, you can see it, but to go over, I was playing the Kahira Kitty Cat build. We were playing no laydown arms. And I've been a staunch, I don't want to say defender because that sounds bad, but I have been in the corner of the lay down arms version for a long time. However, I knew of at least one person who is a very prominent grinder in that St. Louis area that was playing red, white Convoke. And I figured if he was playing it, there was probably going to be several others. I was correct. I believe there were 3 red, white Convoke decks in the room. I did not play against it, but I played 4 temporary lockdowns main. And holy smokes, like I said, this was very clutch throughout the tournament. But I played 4 Wandering Emperors, 3 Teferis, 2 March, 3 Vetoes, 4 Make Disappear, 4 Absorb, 4 Deluge, 2 Verdict, 1 Farewell. As I said, 4 Lockdown, 2 Sharks. Obviously, a mana base that is nice and clean because we're not playing laydown arms. And then in the sideboard, we have some spicy ones. We have 1 Authority of Councils. So this is, if you don't know, a 1 mana enchantment. Creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and you gain 1 life whenever they have a creature enter the battlefield. So, of course, that's 4 red, white Convoke. We've got Dovin's Veto as a 1-of, Fateful Absence, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Mystical Disputes, 1 Settle the Wreckage, 3 Regal Caracals, 1 Elspeth Sun's Champion, an extra Farewell, and kind of the run of the litter, in my opinion, Hullbreaker Horror to round out the 75. What do you think about this list?
Well, let me ask you first. How did you feel about the Caracals?
So I did not play against red black, and that is obviously the main matchup that they come in against. I think you could probably bring them in against Azorius Control as well. So I didn't bring them in, and I think I brought Kahira to hand 1 time against Rona. It was a really weird game though, because he was basically sandbagging a couple spells. We each had 1 million lands in play, and it would basically came down to if he could find a Neoform, he could win. He would just win on the spot because I didn't have a counter spell.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I think that it was the right call, if that's what you're asking, because there was quite a bit of red black in the room. And a lot of, there was, I think somebody was actually playing the mono black mid-range deck from the NRG that I saw. So I think that it would have came in against that, obviously. Like having a creature that brings multiple bodies against a mono black deck seems really good. But yeah, I think it was correct. I like the Angels. Don't get me wrong. I love Lyra. Baneslayer Angels, one of my favorite cards. One of my favorite creatures, at least. But they just they're so easy to deal with, you know?
Let me ask you, just because I've seen a lot of back and forth on this. Sure. How do you, like, obviously you played Rest in Peace.
Yeah.
What makes Rest in Peace feel better to you over Dennick?
Well, I like the fact that it enters the battlefield, you get that trigger immediately, right? That is huge because Dennick obviously can put pressure on your opponent. It protects, obviously it does a very similar thing. But the fact that when it enters, boom, their graveyard's gone, Party Alien's gone. Against Lotus, it hits obviously everything. They don't have an opportunity. I mean, obviously they could kill it, right?
Right.
But
the reason I ask is I really like to look at like sideboard packages with blue white a lot. And it feels like, going back to us talking about Dream Trawler earlier, it feels like if you want to play Dream Trawler, you play Dennick, because that gives you a lot of protection. Like your Dream Trawler, a lot of extra protection from edict effects.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if like you thought that, or why you thought Rest in Peace was better than Dennick in this case.
Yeah. I was happy with the sideboard. Again, I didn't play against the Convoke deck, so I don't know how good Authority was. That was the first card that came to mind, though, whenever I started seeing on Twitter that this deck is seemingly gaining a lot of popularity. I actually posted on Twitter like, oh, so we got to fight against this deck. Let's try Authority. But Settle seems excellent. And Settle is nice too because you can bring it in other matchups. You can bring it in against Mono White, obviously. I think I even brought it in against Mono Green. So it obviously has some added, obviously, Authority is not great against those decks. So yeah, round one, I actually lost round one, Mono Green Devotion. I do think there were a bit of nerves. Again, I forgot Kahira, game one. And then, yeah, it was just getting settled back into a competitive scene it took a round, I would say. Then round two, I played against Phoenix. I will say that the player was pretty new. So we had a couple of judge calls and things of that nature, but yeah, that was fairly easy. I mean, sideboarding, bring in those rest in pieces and all your counter magic. Next up, I played against Mono Green again, actually beat it. And that was one of those matches. I don't know for you, but I feel like with Mono Green, it's either they crush you or it's a grind fest.
Oh, absolutely. Every game.
Yeah.
And it usually depends on Karn.
Yeah. Karn, basically they're planeswalkers, right? You can't let either of their planeswalkers you probably should never let either of them resolve if you have any say about it. Like those are counter on site, right?
Basically.
Yeah, so then the next round I played against Rona Combo, and that was the round again where I said, I mean, Temporary Lockdown just eats that deck's lunch. I casted game one, I casted Temporary Lockdown on turn 3 and turn 5. Then I resolved like Wandering Emperor to Fairy, just crushed them, right? And then game 2, I ended up casting 3 Temporary Lockdowns. It was insane. And I actually beat my buddy Ben Bauer, who lent me a Temporary Lockdown. So that's always...
He totally wasn't mad.
No, he was a great sport. Stand-up guy. And then round 5, I played against Mono Green. I played against the guy that actually ended up winning the tournament. And it came down game 1 and 2. He beat me 2 straight. It came down to, I needed to top deck Farewell. The first game, he Stone Brain named Farewell. I looked, and of course it was Farewell. Because I conceded, because that was my only out. He had like infinite things on the board. And then game 2, he was starting to loop infinitely. And he had the Chain Veil out, and he was doing just, going ham. And I needed a Farewell, but he went infinite, and Farewell was on top of my deck again. And I was just super tilted. And then in the last round, I played against Neoform, and that, like I said, game 1, I had insane draws, like double veto, 1 make disappear, 3 absorbs, like just countered everything. They didn't even get to... I didn't even see an Atraxa. Somebody after the match actually said, what version were they on? I was like, I don't know, because I never saw it. Obviously, though, Temporary Lockdown, not good against Hooting Mandrills and Tassigers. And, so those came out immediately. But overall, went 4-2. I got 10th place. It was a 66-player RCQ. My very first RCQ ever, because they didn't have RCQs. They were called PPTQs last time I was grinding. And I had fun. It was great seeing my buddy Kevin and Ben and JR. And gosh, it was great. It was great. And Jake, Jake. He's actually been on the podcast a couple times. But yeah, I had fun. And you were supposed to go, you jabroni.
Yeah, well,
Work.
when I don't have to work a job for a living, I'll be there every time.
Well, yeah. But yeah, no, it was fun. I would say a big takeaway for me and something that, for listeners, don't let the results of one tournament really sway how you feel about your deck, how you feel about Magic. For me, I took this as a positive. I went 4-2, got 10th place, got $45 in store credit. I was able to finish building the deck completely, so I don't have to mooch. And yeah, it was fun, and it was a good time. I think next time, if I get a little bit more sleep and I play a little bit tighter, definitely, winning one of these things is definitely a possibility for me. But yeah, I don't know what you have to say other than what we've already talked about. What's that?
Said I'll be at the next one.
There, hey, you heard it's on wax. You got to be there next time. There's one in our area coming up in a couple months. I think it's in July. Yeah.
Okay.
So definitely excited. Thanks everybody for watching live. If you are watching live and you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe, comment down below. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode. I know this was a little bit different of an episode, me talking about a tournament report. If you guys like these kind of episodes, though, let me know. Let me know, because, most weeks I'm just getting on folks and talking about their experiences. This week, obviously, we were talking about the NRG, but I wanted to share my experience at the RCQ. It was a good time, and Magic's great. Azorius is great, and yeah. Anything else?
No, glad you had a good time.
Awesome. Well, let's get this end of the podcast housekeeping out of the way. Again, as a reminder, the podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, basically wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to help out, you can head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, give it a 5-star review and a couple kind words. And if you want to support in a more direct way, you can subscribe on Twitch, or head on over to patreon.com/lessalex. And for less than $1 an episode, you can support the podcast. It really does help out. I really do appreciate it. And all my patrons are amazing. Make sure to check out my Quiet Speculation content over there. I make weekly article video hybrid pieces. This past week, like I said, I made Jeskai Narset in Explorer. And this Tuesday, my new piece will be coming out where I play mono white humans in Explore on Arena. And if you want to chop it up with me elsewhere, follow me on Twitter at LessAlex over there, or join the Discord. Like I said, it is an open Discord. And if you are a patron or a subscriber to the Twitch, there are additional channels that are open, but it is an open Discord to anyone. So if you're a control freak like me and want to chop it up and talk some Azorius, or just want to talk about Magic, hit it up. I appreciate everybody for watching. Evan, I know you're not on social media too much, but you can share your stuff or not. Either way.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks, Evan. I appreciate you for hanging out and talking NRG and talking all the tournaments this weekend and my experience at the RCQ. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all. Keep spreading that Azorius propaganda. And until next time, keep spreading that Azorius propaganda, control freaks. Adios.